Hi, everybody. Welcome back. This is Sultana Nosrati, and today we're going to talk about a topic I see a lot of in my practice called anxiety. Especially this year, it's been really tough for a lot of people, and oftentimes they're not really sure what anxiety is. So, today, the goal is to help you understand what anxiety is and some quick ways for you to kind of cope with it and not have it be so overwhelming. The first thing that I want you to remember is there's a certain category of things that make up anxiety. Worrying about stuff doesn't necessarily mean that you have an anxiety disorder. It has to really cause some sort of interruption in your life, whether it's your personal life or your professional life or out in the community. But even if you don't have a diagnosis, anxiety can be kind of a pain in the butt. And so I want to talk about that first. So the first thing I get a lot of patients reporting to me is that they feel very anxious, nervous. Some of the things they'll say is like, I feel like I'm kind of on edge. There's always something going on. They're unable to stop or control their worries. So it's just an ongoing thing all day long. In fact, I hear a lot of my folks telling me, I'm going to sleep, but I'm having a hard time falling asleep. And I'm like, why not? They're like, my brain just keeps on moving. That's another symptom of anxiety, worrying too much about different things. So in order for you to have a diagnostic of anxiety disorder, you actually have to have more than one thing that you're worried about. But like I said, even if you're only worrying about one thing, but it's kind of obsessive and it's nonstop, it's still a problem, right? So people report that they worry about their job, their family, their health, nowadays COVID, their children, how they're going to cope with online teaching, which is a problem for me. So that's what we're talking about. Different things across all kinds of parts of your life that you find yourself really worrying about. Trouble relaxing. So one of the ways that I see this with my patients is they'll sit down and they'll try to relax, but they feel like there's something else that they need to be doing. So they kind of, even though they're sitting down and they look like they're relaxed, their brain is elsewhere. Being so restless that it's hard to sit still. Some of you just kind of like constantly moving around or jiggling of the leg. That's another symptom of anxiety. And being easily annoyed or irritable. Now, we all get annoyed, and there's some common things that annoy everybody, like that guy that cut you off in traffic. I'm not really talking about that. What I'm talking about is when you get annoyed over something that normally you wouldn't have been bothered by. So that's kind of a way to keep an eye on, oh, I might be struggling with anxiety right now, right? Okay. Feeling afraid as if something awful might happen. For some people, it's very specific, like they're afraid that they're going to get cancer or that they're going to get COVID or that they're going to lose their jobs. But for some people who suffer from anxiety, it's really, they'll tell me that it's more like an impending sense of doom. They're not always sure what it is. So sometimes it's specific, but sometimes it's not. And either way, anxiety. So great. Now you know what anxiety is, and you're probably thinking, thanks, Sultan. I really appreciate it. Now I'm afraid I've got anxiety. How are you supposed to cope? Well, there's two different ways that I highly recommend that my patients use to cope. The first is coping skills. So, for example, things like taking a walk, that's always really, really helpful. And I have patients that report that when they start walking, they feel kind of anxious, but as the walk goes along, they feel like their mind's clearing up, that antsy feeling goes away. So that's a very good technique, and I highly recommend it. Also journaling. So for those of you that find yourself laying in bed and you're like, oh, I can't sleep, I keep thinking about my job and what I got to do tomorrow and what I need to remember to buy. So when I say journaling, I don't mean, the traditional sense of a diary. What I'm saying is you just sit down right before you go to bed, for maybe a half hour before you go to bed, and you just write everything that's on your mind. So when you're laying down and trying to sleep and your mind starts to play games with you, what you say is, okay, I already know it's written down. I'll worry about it tomorrow. And that really helps people put things in perspective. It helps them feel more calm and help them go to sleep. The next thing I always tell folks, and you could use this right after the journaling or by itself, is doing what we call controlled breathing. That's breathing in through the nose with your mouth closed and breathing out through the nose with your mouth closed to the diaphragm. When you're doing that and you do that consistently, it calms your brain because it increases the oxygen flow to the frontal cortex. That's that thing over here that's causing you all of that anxiety. So that's another thing we want to keep to do. Drinking water in the moment gives you a chance to kind of catch your breath and kind of adjust. I do not recommend drinking alcohol. Now, I know, we like alcohol, especially relaxing after a long day, but it actually doesn't make the anxiety any better except for in that moment. And I know most of us don't want to develop a problem with alcohol, so it's better to stick to water. Get a hug. If you do happen to live with someone, even if it's a child, I highly recommend hugging. Having someone hug you and have it be a comforting one is very helpful, and it's very soothing. So when you're feeling anxious and you get a really good long hug, it has the ability of making you feel more calm. Coloring. I know you're thinking, not 12, right? None of us are. But it's still a good practice. Coloring, drawing, even creating something small. For me, the top coping mechanism that I have is I bake and I cook up a storm. Baking is very soothing because I already know what I'm doing, and it's just about coming up with different ideas, and you can really get lost in it. So in a lot of ways, at the end, I create a cupcake. It's great. Everybody loves it. But the process of baking is very soothing. If you hate baking, that would not be the technique I would use. Finding something positive to distract yourself. So it could be anything. For me, since I am on YouTube, one of the ways that I like to kind of cope with when I'm feeling a little anxious is I'll put on one of those cutesy little videos that the art schools put on. They're like 3-minute videos. They're usually very funny or enlightening, and it's nice because it takes your mind off what it is that you are worrying about. Comedy specials are another thing. That comedies is a really great way to kind of relax and have the anxiety ease out. So that's what I mean by positive distraction. Stay present. So staying present basically means that you're using one of the 5 senses. So either something that you can touch, something you can taste, hear. So for hearing, for example, listening to soothing music or music that reminds you of when you were young, that's always a really good one. Touching is feeling the sensation of your fingers or feeling the armchair underneath my hands. That's like a really good way of keeping you present, because part of anxiety is your mind is going a mile a minute and you can't really grasp onto anything. So if you focus on what it is that you could see, touch, smell, hear, it's a really good technique. For taste, I recommend a small piece of chocolate, as long as your diet doesn't preclude it. Letting the chocolate slowly melt in your mouth and trying to see how many different flavors and nuances you can taste is a really good way to just kind of bring your brain down, because what you're doing is you're giving your brain something else to chew on, which is really what it needs. Ask for help, finally. Ask for help. If you're finding that these techniques are not enough and they're not working for you, it might be time to seek help from a professional such as myself or someone else. Some people report that they find it very helpful to talk to their pastor when they're feeling anxious. Whatever works, right? So you want to do something that you want to ask for help. You don't want to just sit there and suffer. There's no need for you to suffer. And quite honestly, as a clinician, anxiety is one of the easiest things for me to treat, because it really is about using the consistent coping skills and figuring out what it is that's causing the issue and helping the patient process through. So that's for the coping skills. Now, there's another technique I like teaching my patients that I actually learned from a class I took on CBT when I was getting certified. And the guy had this amazing thing called the anxiety formula. And basically what it is it's a study done. It was a longitudinal study, and the people who needed to participate had to have some form of an anxiety disorder. And what they found is that out of 100% of the time, when people worry, 90% of the time, the thing that they worry about never happens. Which is why there's that term that worry is a misuse of my imagination. You worried about what might happen, not what actually happens. If you notice, when crap really does hit the fan, you don't have time to worry about it. You just kind of deal with it. So it helps to know that 90% of the time, the thing you worry about never happens. I know what you're thinking. There's that other 10%, and you're like, what am I supposed to do with the 10%? Well, out of that 10%, 7.9% of the time, I believe it was, what ends up happening is one of two things. One, the thing I worry about was not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Or two, I handled it better than I thought I would, which is good stuff. So what you're really left with is 2.1% where the crap really hits the fan. So it's good to remind yourself when you are worried about something specific that, hey, the chances of this happening, this horrible thing I'm worried is going to happen, is only about 2.1%, which is really good odds, right? Well, what do you do when the crap really does hit the fan, right? You want to kind of think about that when you're worried. You're like, well, what do I do if it does happen? No problem. Every human being comes equipped with two things: internal resources and external resources. Those of us who worry are also really expert problem solvers. We have plan A to Z down to a T. So your internal resource would be that you are a problem solver. So if the crap really does hit the fan, guess what? You already have a solution somewhere in the back of your mind to utilize. Another thing that we have is most of us are resilient. If you're older than 5, you've had bad things happen in your life at some point, maybe less than others, maybe more than others, but you've had bad things happen, and yet here you are, coping, living, existing. So chances are you'll probably be able to do that again, right? External resources are things like family, friends, a savings account, health insurance, right? Those are what we call external resources, and they're so wonderful. Again, it goes back to that whole thing about don't be afraid to ask for help, even if it's from a family member. Anyhow, I hope you found today helpful and that this helps you cope with whatever anxiety you might have. If you like the video, please hit like and subscribe to this channel. That is how I get my support. And if you have any questions or if there's a topic you would like to hear about, please feel free to reach out. Have a wonderful day. Bye.